welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I'm Adam. Last week we were a little bit bumpy about actually sticking to our release schedule, so here I am. I'm going to give an extra episode of 30-Minute Reviews. Last night, if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I rewatched Spider-Man 3, and I'm not one to make a big deal about come up with headlines designed to get attention. That said, I think this movie has a really bad reputation that's not entirely earned as well as it seems. So I watched the movie. The CGI is terrible. Let's just get the bad out on front. And the reason why I went back to watch this movie is because of seeing Venom. I wanted to see which was a better portrayal of Venom. Obviously, Tom Hardy's portrayal was better. That said, it's two different portrayals between how Topher Grace and Tom Hardy do it. But Tom Hardy's relationship with Venom is more expanded on, but that comes with the fact that it's a dedicated movie to Venom and not a movie about Spider-Man versus Venom and Sandman and the Hobgoblin for a period. Now, I think that's what the key problem here is. This movie shouldn't have had Venom at all, I don't think. This movie should have just had the symbiote coming in, and he should have had the black suit for the movie, and then at the end, that scene in the bell tower, that should have been the ending tag of the movie, is him in the bell tower getting the symbiote off after he defeats Sandman, and the symbiote bonding with Eddie Brock. You could have him lethally take care of Sandman, or the fact that his decisions throughout the movie under the influence of the suit make him need to disavow it. Maybe it's the reason why Harry Osborn dies. There are ways you can do it, but then at the end of this movie, he should have gotten rid of the suit, and the suit should have bonded with Eddie, and that should have been that should have been what happened here. But because Venom's thrown into the movie, you have this awkward second and third act, especially with the amount of time that's spent with the relationship between Peter and Harry and Peter and Mary Jane. There's too much time spent on that in this movie, and if you look at all of the contemporaries of that time period, relationships don't really take that much time. If you look at, this movie came out in 2007, so it was a year after Batman Begins. Batman Begins doesn't spend too much time on the relationship between Bruce Wayne and, I forget Katie Holmes' character's name. Iron Man, which comes out a year after this, doesn't spend too much time on the relationship between Pepper and Tony. Incredible Hulk bucks this trend by spending a lot of time on the relationship between Betty and Bruce. The X-Men movies don't do that. It's just a thing. It's if you follow the relationship too closely, what ends up happening is you have not enough room to really expand on characters in other ways, and it takes up too much screen time, especially when you have a love triangle with him and Mary Jane and him and Gwen Stacy. And he's sitting on Betty Brant at one point, and it's just, there's too much other extraneous stuff going on. The three villains could have worked, even in this movie, if it weren't for all this other extraneous shit going on throughout the entire movie that's kind of derailing the plot, where you're like, holy crap, let's just get this on with and get to the fight. Also, I think that they should have been more budget-minded when they made this movie. I get that Sandman, for what this is him revisiting his origin and looking at his origin again, like how if you look at Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, it's the first time that he has to really confront his decisions regarding what happened in his it's not his decision, he was an infant, but it's his first time confronting his origin in a worthwhile way. In the first Spider-Man, you have him confront the guy he believes killed his father. He believes killed Uncle Ben, Jesus Christ. He, because of that, it kind of was washed over, because then he becomes Spider-Man, as we know him. Then it's not really addressed again, and it just comes up in, conversations with Aunt May and stuff like that. And you get to the end of the movie. For this one, now you're stuck with. Now you have to revisit it. It's worth revisiting at this point. It's like if you do a Batman, you want to do Hush at some point because Hush is going to force you to revisit the death of his parents in a way that's not just showing what happened to get him to become Batman. So what they do here is they have him. It turns out they got the wrong guy for the killer. The real killer was Flint Marko, aka Sandman. Which would have been a much better, which, if I did this movie, and I know it's 12 years later, or 11 years later, and I'm being an armchair director, but if I were to do this movie, I would have it where he gets the black suit, like, basically the first act goes as it is, where he gets the black suit, and Flint Marko gets his powers, and then he confronts the Hobgoblin. Maybe I wouldn't have him get amnesia because I feel like that was a cop out considering how built it was to this point. At the end of the second movie, when he finds out that his father, when he finds out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, it maybe not give him amnesia and just like take him out of the picture for a while. Then have him lethally dispatch over the course of the movie under the influence of the symbiote. Have him be the lethal protector, for lack of a better word, and have him take out both of them. And then at the end, he ends up disavowing the symbiote, and then Venom bonds with Eddie Brock. That way, most of the movie can stay intact, and you can do that. Now, the relationship stuff that's taking up a lot of screen time, maybe make Peter seem like he's more on the ball with this, because, to be honest, there's not too much going on in the movie that, like, he shouldn't have picked up on his own. Like, his relationship being on the rocks with Mary Jane, he should have known that was a bad idea. He should have known it was a bad idea to kiss Gwen Stacy the way he kissed her in Spider-Man 1. Like, there are a lot of decisions that he makes that the movie makes it seem like we should side with him and sympathize with him. It's like, oh, he broke up with her, but, like, not really. He was kind of a douche the entire, up until this point, where it's like, he keeps making any conversation she has about her issues with acting as a struggling actress. He goes in with Spider-Man. It's like, yeah, but that's not helping, because Spider-Man's been largely successful, and his failures aren't quite as publicly known, so it's not as big a deal. So I think that's another thing the movie really needed to fix. But the three villains is something that this movie gets a lot of flack for, and the portrayal of Venom is something the movie gets a lot of flack for. I think if you were to fix the portrayal of Topher Grace's Venom, I think Topher Grace being the way he is, I think it's an accurate portrayal for what a photographer for a newspaper would look like. Topher Grace, and I think that him bonding with Venom was not a bad idea. They should have bulked up Venom a little bit so he didn't look so scrawny, but then again, it works because he's supposed to be the anti-Spider-Man. It's more the anti-Spider-Man in this movie than he is Venom, because he's never referred to as Venom in the movie. So he, what's it called? The other thing they should have done is altered his voice a little bit when he's in the suit, because it's not, I think regardless of if I had seen Venom or not, I still think it'd be jarring to hear Topher Grace's voice come out of Venom's mouth, when he's like, you want to kill the spider, I want to kill the spider. It's like, yeah, but maybe Venom should have a more intimidating voice, and I think that's something that they should have done. The suit looks good. And each of the villains does get some development. If you go into this movie blind without seeing anything prior, because keep in mind, I haven't watched any of the other Spider-Man movies in years, and despite them being very good, but the problem is when you watch this movie, it's still very serviceable. As long as you have some proximate knowledge of what Spider-Man is, because everything you need to know in the movie is explained here through backstory, and even the opening credits illustrate the story to this point. So you can basically walk into this movie blind and see it. And this movie is still better than both of the Amazing Spider-Man movies, because this movie treats the audience as adults, and like everything you need to know to watch this. Like, that's the good way to tell what a good sequel is. I think what I'm trying to say is if you can walk into the movie blind and having not seen the first one, you're in good shape. But if it's like requisite viewing, if it's a requisite viewing to see this movie and enjoy it, then that's where the problem comes in. Then you're making a sequel for the viewer who saw the first one, not so much the person off the screen. Which is what you really got to do, is because if it's just the people who saw the first one, if everyone liked the first one, you're only going to make back what you did on the first one. So you got to get more people to see it. If one person didn't like it, you're going to make less money. So what you got to do is you got to make the movie serviceable to anyone who comes in. It's like Logan does that very well. This movie does that to an extent. It's not as well done, but this movie does that to an extent. I think that's also aided by the fact that Spider-Man's origin and Spider-Man's story is kind of built into the American mythology at this point, where most people know the story of Spider-Man, where Uncle Ben gets killed and he goes and becomes Spider-Man after getting bit by a radioactive spider. I think it's just built in, and a lot of the cliches that come from movies and things come from Spider-Man. So I think that's also why the movie works as a standalone without watching anything prior. But I think this movie gets an undue bad reputation because of how good Spider-Man 2 is. If Spider-Man 2 was not as good and not in the conversation of one of the top 5 super comic book movies of all time, then we wouldn't be having a conversation as to why is it so bad. This movie was mid-range, or the same quality as like X-Men, the first X-Men movie, which was also very good, or if it was the same quality as the first Spider-Man, then there'd be a different conversation to have, and this movie would be better regarded, and maybe we would have gotten Raimi doing Spider-Man 4, but because of the reception to this movie, they wanted to distance themselves, so they rebooted. So we'll end off with that. We did Monday's episode of Beware of Spoilers on Saturday, so you can check that out. I did A Star Is Born. Today is Tuesday. Tomorrow we got a new episode of Beware of Spoilers, all about Nina. Is the episode, and then Friday I have First Man. We'll end off there for tonight. For today, have a great day.